Hello and welcome to the State Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Kelly. Today on State Secrets, we're stepping into, of course, the world of covert operations, high stakes intelligence, and the ever evolving nature of modern conflict. And I know you're asking what's so different about that. You do it every day. But today we are doing this in a much more entertaining way. From the pages of Tom Clancy to screens both big and small, Jack Ryan has long been a window into how America understands threats, power, and the people that are tasked with navigating both of those things. That story now continues with Ghost War, a new feature-length film from Amazon Prime Video that brings Ryan into a world kind of defined less by clear battle lines and more by shadow conflict, which, of course, for those who follow the Cipher Brief, is something we talk about a lot here.
You think I would send you out there all alone?
Oh, wow. Are you sending backup?
Oh, shit. Look who it is.
Oh, so you're trying to get me killed?
No offense taken.
This is it? This is the kind of crackerjack officer you're going for at the agency now?
Just trying to fill your shoes, buddy.
On a contract basis.
Ouch.
But you know what? We'll always have to rub it, right, Mike?
Call me when it's done.
You got it.
Where are you going?
Welcome back.
I said I wasn't doing it. Don't do that. You're better than that.
He's good, isn't he?
So joining me today is director Andrew Bernstein. We're so excited to get to the guy who does all the work. You will, of course, recognize a lot of his work from some of television's most compelling dramas, a lot of our favorites here, from the Americans to Ozark. He brings what I think is a really sharp eye for tension, for character, and realism to Ghost War. It's a film that really feels as much rooted, I think, in today's geopolitical landscape as it does in classic espionage storytelling. Andrew, welcome to the State Secrets podcast at the Cipher Brief.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
This is quite fun. We are getting to know each other a little bit during today's conversation, but of course, a lot of people who read the Cipher Brief already know your work on prior, especially with the Americans, which was a phenomenal series. This Jack Ryan Ghost War is kind of pushing into some new territory. And I'm wondering, it taps into a kind of conflict that I think feels less viable, but in the real world is really more constant. I'm wondering if Ghost War, what it kind of meant to you in the context of today's geopolitical environment. How much were you thinking about that when you took on this role?
Every day, every second. I'll preface my answer by saying one of the great pleasures and luxuries of making this movie is that we spent a lot of time with our friends at CIA and at MI6. They were both incredibly helpful in making the movie. They were generous with their time, with their buildings. We shot at CIA. We actually shot outside MI6 in London. And getting to know the people who do that job had a profound effect on all of us. And so when we talk about what stories we're telling, how we're telling it, how we're portraying these people, they are front and center in our mind all the time. So I am, when you ask the question about sort of the geopolitics of today's world, yeah, because we're hearing the stories. I mean, the unclassified stories, the ones they can tell us. But we, it's super important, and I think it's sort of like, it's a political show. It's an entertainment first and foremost. We're trying to entertain people, but we want to sort of be relatable to the world we're living in. And I think it's also why Clancy has kind of been so relevant for so long, because he's been talking about the geopolitics, obviously since his first book, and history repeats itself, and we're dealing with a lot of the same stuff. So it's why Jack Ryan seems to always be relevant as a character. But in our storytelling and what we want to talk about, it needs to be grounded in reality and be relatable. Otherwise, there's no point in telling it. So it's a long-winded way of saying, yes, we think about it all the time. We talk about it all the time. We try to make it entertainment, but it needs to feel real to the characters and certainly to those of us who are making it.
Yeah, that's interesting, because when you're directing something like this, you're working with a variety of different actors. I thought it was superbly cast, by the way, for what it's worth.
Thank you.
And it felt like kind of a return to like the high action thrillers when Jack Ryan was previously in theaters as opposed to just on television. It was very different in that way. And I'm curious, when you're dealing like with these actors and with your crew and with the entire team that's required to produce something like this, how many, I guess, of the actors in particular are kind of interested in the real world aspects of this? And how important is that? Does it matter at all? Or is it just simply follow the script, read your lines, be fantastic on camera?
Well, listen, I mean, there are some people like that for sure. Our cast is politically astute. They are politically active. They are politically curious. We talk about politics all the time. And so, no, no, there's none of that. We talk about it all the time. So it's in the DNA of those of us who make these movies. It helps make it real. And so, sure, there are people who come in now and again who are like, where do I stand and how do I, what do I say? But that's, that's not the folks we want around. Certainly in our Jack Ryan universe, we want people who are sort of aware of the world and are active in the world in whatever the way they choose to do that. And we take that very seriously.
I asked that question because I think it really shows in the script, both the writing of the script and then, of course, like the final version of this film that's out. It definitely feels like it's kind of ripped from the headlines. These people understand simply by their dialogue what the issues are today. How important is it? It's a very blunt question, and feel free to give me a very blunt answer. You've worked on the Americans as well. You've done this. I wonder, how important is it to get a balance between kind of entertainment versus this is the way it would really work? I mean, because audiences, whether we like it or not, walk away from films like this thinking that is how it really works. How important is that balance to you?
It's a harder balance when we spend a lot of time talking to the real people, because they give us their stories and then we fictionalize them. And I mean, I'll give you a very brief example. Sienna Miller, who plays our MI6 agent, I had the luxury of talking to an officer over in MI6 in London. And I remember asking her, would you ever jump off a bridge onto a boat by any chance? And she was like, never. Like, I would never do that. And I go, okay, well, our character's going to do that, so get ready. So you have to balance it, and as long as sort of the spirit of the action and the idea behind it makes sense, sometimes we obviously do take entertainment leaps, and we do balance it. I mean, if something, again, small example, you can't bring cell phones into the CIA. You see that in movies all the time. We will never cross that line. I think we did it once early on in the TV series, and they were not happy about that, and so we never did it again. So in ways we can do it and not sort of jeopardize the entertainment value. Of course, we're going to do it as grounded as we can, and sometimes we have to take those leaps. And what we found out is that people in the intelligence services who we deal with totally get it. They understand it. It's most important for us, honestly, to sort of forget about sort of those kinds of things. It's more about their hearts and their souls and the ways they approach their work and their dedication and their commitment and their patriotism. That's what's most important to us, and we hope that comes across. Sometimes we're going to make them into a little bit more of a superhero than they probably are.
Yeah, I think people appreciate that, though. I mean, ultimately, they're watching the movie to be entertained, right? I mean, that is why we all tune in.
Exactly.
And I think that definitely comes through. The CIA does have kind of a fantastic, because we've worked with them as well, a liaison program that will work with folks who are shooting movies, films, television series. I didn't know, Andrew, that MI6 had something similar. I have known from our prior work with several former chiefs of MI6 who are now Cipher brief experts that they're not super open about letting people even inside the building. What was your experience like between sort of CIA and MI6?
It's a great question. CIA, as you said, has had a history of supporting and cooperating with entertainment, letting people film in their building, as we did, being very helpful. The MI6 folks were very reticent in the beginning to do it. and we totally understood why. That's not who they are. It's not what they're interested in. But it was about building a relationship. They understood we were not there to exploit them. I think the good folks at the CIA might have, give them a call and say, "Hey, they're good people. Like, they're not gonna mess with you." And I think that really helped that we had a history with CIA. But it was, we built a relationship with them over many months, and sort of tried, and I think did earn their trust. They were uncomfortable with it at first, and we didn't shoot inside their building, but if you watch the movie, we shot outside their building, which they had never done before. They had never allowed somebody to even do what we did before, and I think at the end of the day, they were super happy with what we did. But yes, it's a very different organization in terms of that kind of thing. They just aren't used to it, and it's certainly much easier in a world where it's about keeping secrets to sort of keep us entertainment folks at arm's length.
I was surprised by that. I was surprised that you guys were able to do so.
Everybody is. Yeah, it's really, everybody. It's funny. It's still a topic of conversation, and I kind of love it about them. They're just kind of like, yeah, we're good. Like, we're good. We don't need to do that. But they were great, and we love them to death. And the access. And the other thing to us was what they understood was we just wanted to pick their brains about how they do their jobs. We had a new character in our movie, played by Sienna Miller, who's a female MI6 officer, and we just want to know what that looked like. What is that person's life like? How do they do that job and exist as a woman in that workforce? And I think they wanted us to portray it accurately or as best we could, and so I think that's part of why they spoke to us.
Well, look, I mean, what better time to do that and to have a portrayal of Sienna Miller's character, because the MI6 is now led by a woman. This is a woman who has come up through the ranks and really established herself as an outstanding professional from the folks that we talk to at every level. And these are insiders, and these people don't just, offer praise on all their colleagues. They're sometimes very also critical of their colleagues. And that's not been the case with Blaze in this particular instance. But she's also surrounded by a lot of very strong female characters. So I'm wondering if we're almost getting to the point where we're not identifying fantastic characters as male, female anymore. They're just fantastic professionals in the intelligence space. Do you think we're getting any closer to that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for us, obviously, Sienna is a new, we haven't had that in the Jack Ryan franchise, so it just feels very new. But our hope is moving forward that it won't feel new. I mean, we were fortunate enough to spend a little time with Blaze prior to her being, made chief, and she was incredible. And we got to sit down with a bunch of women there, and they were all unbelievable and unbelievably helpful and gracious and talented and smart. And as I say to people, as our world gets crazier and crazier and scarier, having met these people and sat down with them on both sides in London and in DC, I do sleep a little bit better. I do. I just feel like at least somebody, is out there who I know is their eye on the ball.
Somebody's on that wall, right?
Somebody's on that wall, yeah. And it's sort of like, listen, and there are times now where that's tough to see. So, but Blaze was incredible. And when she was named chief, I couldn't have been more excited.
Oh, that's funny. So you knew her before. That's even more.
I knew her when she was Q, which she was before she was Blaze. I mean, before she was chief.
Yeah. I know, you got to keep up. You got to keep up with all the letters over there to keep it all straight.
I know.
Was there anything like when you were making this, or back when you were making The Americans, even? Is there anything that has occurred to you as a director when you're trying to take on a big project like this with heavy expectations? I think the genre is, people have an expectation that you're going to produce something that's entertaining, that has compelling characters, that has a storyline that's realistic and doesn't get cheesy, and that has dialogue that keeps them like, wow, you're giving me little snippets of what this world is really like. Has there been anything over the course of this movie in particular that you sort of like surprised you, or you thought, gosh, I hadn't thought of that before, or I wouldn't have imagined this? It just sort of like happened naturally.
It's a great question. I mean, we balance all those things. We have to balance all those things.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if it surprised me, but I was really happy about was how emotional the movie was to me. Um, these relationships between these people who are like a family, you know, and their interactions together are super compelling, but it's emotional. I mean, whether it's John and Sienna or Michael and Wendell and Wendell and John, you know, they're all deep relationships, and they rely on each other for their very survival. And I thought that was sort of like, you know, my hope is that comes out in the movie. You know, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of excitement, there's all the bells and whistles in making these movies. But at the end of the day, if the relationships don't work and the emotion behind those relationships don't work, then the movie really doesn't work. So, and that's what we heard from all these people that we spoke to. As I was saying, you know, they rely on each other. They, you know, they're in a world where they really can't tell anyone else what they do for a living. You know, it can be a lonely experience, and I think trying to sort of convey that part of it, you know, is super important. And was when it came off the screen, even filming it, you know, there were moments when I was like, wow, this is pretty intense. And so, you know, all the big actiony stuff was as expected. It was fun and crazy and nutty and hard, but it's the moments between characters that I think are always the ones that are the most surprising to me.
I think those are the things that are truly memorable too, from people like, you know, just regular viewers after they watch a movie. They remember their relationships. They remember maybe, you know, the great one-liners that kind of summed up a relationship. But oh my gosh, like some of the car chase scene, like the big action, you know, action thriller scenes that you described. I was sitting there watching the movie thinking, I don't even know how you begin to start to shoot something like this. And it's not because no one's ever done it. It's just because I've never stopped long enough to think about how do they do it? How do you even approach like these massive action scenes? I mean, it must be crazy.
It is crazy. And I will say, no one has ever done that large a car chase in central London before. Never been done. And
okay, well, then I feel a little better because I was like, wow, all of a sudden I'm thinking about this differently. How did they do it?
yeah, it's sort of, you know, a lot of car chases you see that are supposed to be London are not filmed there because it's just super difficult. And it's a very, you know, London, it's not an easy city to film in. It's, you know, there's a lot of people. But we did it. We shut down central London. We shut down Parliament Square to shoot these action sequences. They take months of planning, dealing with, you know, multiple levels of bureaucracy and people whose first inclination is always to say no because that's the easiest. One of the great things about our franchise in this group is we usually don't take no for an answer, and so yeah, it. When I look back on it and I watch it, I can't believe we did it because it's just so crazy to try to do something like that. And similar with our boat chase in Dubai. I mean, we had never shot in Dubai before. It was a part of the world we were unfamiliar with going into it. And they do things differently than you do in London or New York or LA or wherever. So that was its own challenge to sort of educate people on the size of our movie and what we do when we show up to your town. So those all have political sides to them that are aside from just the actual filming of a scene. It's building relationships and convincing people you're not going to, you know, destroy their country.
Sounds a lot kind of like what a spy does when they're recruiting assets.
Yeah, we did a lot of meetings in restaurants and places like that where we had to sort of, you know, convince people to come onto our side and you know, and believe in the idea of what we were doing.
Yeah. It's great, like I said, to sort of see this as a full film. Do you think there's going to be more like this in the future?
I hope so. I mean, you know, I was telling someone, you know, and Michael Kelly was actually saying, who plays Mike November in the movie, you know, he always leans over to John's like, so when are we doing this again? Because everybody, you know, it is a big family. We do sort of really like each other and enjoy working together. And, you know, listen, John loves the character. You know, he would love to make another movie. He said that publicly. So it's just about coming up with the idea that makes another movie make sense. I mean, I think we set the movie up so that there's more to learn about Jack Ryan. We end him at the CIA, so he sort of, there's a whole other world to look at there. Sienna Miller is a new character. We're excited to keep going in this franchise. So there's a lot to still do. So I hope we get to do it. We hope people show up to watch this one, which is what makes another one possible. So, and also, I'll also say, again, going back to the conversations I've had with people who do this for a living in the real world, there's a lot of stories. It's sort of like, there's a lot more stories. There's a lot more emotional conflict to mine in how they do their work. And the more we can tell these people's stories in a honest fashion, I think people will show up to listen. I hope they will.
Andrew, you touched on something that is really kind of central to us at the Cipher Brief as well, which is so many of the threats that are actually facing Americans today, Americans aren't even aware of. And that's not calling Americans stupid. It's that the adversaries have so many different mechanisms. For example, they're buried deep inside our critical infrastructure already. If you ask the average American, if China literally decided to turn off a sector of electricity in somewhere in the United States, they could do it. People might say, no, I don't believe you. Or if you look at the disinformation campaigns and the resources in particular that Russia puts into disinformation, for example, and how good they are at it. An professionals will tell you they're really good. And you're probably getting this on your phone. There are so many different threats. I wonder how much of an education component do you think the entertainment industry has in terms of like responsibility for keeping it real enough so that you give people something to think about and educate them along the way? Should that be a part of it, do you think?
It's a great question. I mean, yes and no. I mean, at the end of the day, we're there to entertain people. And I think as the world gets crazier and scarier, entertainment has an even larger place in our life. And that isn't to scare people when they go into the theaters. Yes, it's to entertain them. Do we want people to come out of movies in our movie thinking about things and asking questions? Of course we do. And we want to keep it as grounded and as real as possible. But at the end of the day, it is entertainment. And that's what we want to give people. And so, I lean on that side. But my personal, I love the world of what you guys do and of Jack Ryan and of espionage and all that stuff. And so, and the more I can learn about it, the more it goes into what I make. So I hope it balances out in some form. But if we don't entertain people, then no one's going to show up and we're not going to get to do it again. So it's a great question and one I ask myself all the time. I can't remember who said it once. I feel like it might have even been like Tom Hanks who said, good politics doesn't always make good entertainment. So, it's sort of like it's important to sort of entertain first. And if you could teach somebody something about or make them think at the end of the day, even better. That's what you want to do.
I think just making people think is a win. That's a huge
and
win.
Feel.
And
feel.
Feel.
I agree.
And let them decide for themselves, right? This is America. But
it's exactly
have them
right.
think and feel. I love that. That's a fantastic answer.
I think so.
When you go home and like you hang out with your family or friends and other colleagues and you talk about the film and you're done with a big project like this, you take sort of a deep breath. What's the one thing that you usually tell them? I mean, what does it feel like at the end of a huge project like this?
That I need to sleep, probably. No, I mean, it's, I think we're all sort of semi-adrenaline junkies in a way. I think, it's like a lot of semi-painful experiences at time. When it's over, you don't remember it. You don't remember the pain. You just remember the excitement and the adrenaline boost and the thrill it was to make it. And so that's why you kind of always want to jump back in and everyone's always like, you're going to take time off after this. Yeah. When I'm like, no, like sign me up tomorrow to do whatever next thing I'm going to do, because that's sort of what we do and tell stories and entertain people. And if I get to do it in a world that we screened the movie at CIA like about 2 weeks ago, and for about 500 people there. And how lucky is that we got to go?
What did they say to you after?
We were told they loved it. We did a Q&A with them which was super powerful and fun to do. And I think they all loved it as entertainment. Yes, there were things in there that were like crazy and not what they do, but they were fine with that, it seemed. And you know, again, I think they understand that if we can sort of accurately, in some way, portray what it's like, not from a runaround standpoint, but from like a personal standpoint of what it's like to live in that headspace
Yeah.
for a second, I think they're super happy about it and super excited to be a participant in it. So it was fun. It's an honor. It's why, to your, I think a question you asked before, you know, we keep them in mind every time we do something because we know they're going to watch it, and we know they're going to, you know, be proud of it, hopefully, and that means a lot to us. And you know, there's a shot in the movie where we see the stars on the wall of the CIA, and that's, you know, those kind of things are really important to us, and it's not political. It's, you know, it's not one side or the other. It's about service and commitment and doing that job and understanding what it means to do that job. And we hope we can sort of, with all the divisiveness in our country right now, to sort of do something that sort of hopefully feels human, not polarizing. Wow, that's pretty cool if we can do it.
I don't know if they told you this, but just comparing notes with you here, we know a few folks at the CIA, of course, who we've talked to for 10 years and in the course of our reporting and analysis and everything else. They don't let people take pictures of that wall with the stars just off the cuff. That's a kind of big deal. It's a very somber, it is the heart of sort of the risk all those people take. So even them letting, you know, folks shoot that wall, I think is a big deal that I don't know that most people pick up on when they're watching the movie, but that's pretty neat.
I hope they do. And it happens at a certain part in the movie where there's a voiceover going on that sort of relates to sort of, you know, it all makes sense, hopefully, and there's a reason why we show it. And but it's, again, the movie's about these guys, the sacrifices they make and the moral choices they have to make, and putting their lives on the line, and that's what that wall in a way symbolizes. So it's important for us symbolically, for the movie and for the Jack Ryan franchise, to kind of get that on screen, and you know, we don't throw it on there just because it's cool or because, you know, whatever. It means something, and I know it means so much to them too. So you know, any chance we can to sort of show what these people do, the better.
Oh, I think it's great. I know that so many of the folks we work with in the community appreciate the fact that, you know, there are movies like this that kind of show you some of the things that it is like at the CIA. You might not be like the MI6 character jumping on boats or things like that. And you might not be an analyst who gets to go out and live the life of the most exciting case officer. But you do get a sense of the mission, right? You do get a sense of, you've got to give up a lot of your life to take on this role. And I don't think a lot of Americans think about that when they think about the CIA. So it's great to see some of these movies that kind of do give you a real sense of the commitment, particularly the commitment on behalf of some of these people who sign up for the work. And by the way, not a whole lot of pay. Probably make a lot more money making a Jack Ryan movie than you do being an analyst at the agency. I'm just going to guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I would guess too. You know, it's, you know, again, there's a great scene in the movie with Wendell Pierce and John Krasinski where John's character Jack says, you know, I am the cost, when he's talking to Wendell and in this conference room in London. And that's kind of something we've never kind of seen with Jack's character before. Like, he is the cost of doing this. And there, as you just said, there is a cost to it. It does take something out of you. And there's a lot of sacrifice there. And I think you're right. I think people don't understand that. They think, oh, it's just, you know, people think of spies, they think of James Bond, and they think of, you know, that kind of stuff. And we hope that we can sort of show another side of it while entertaining, that, you know what, there is a cost to this job, and there are people on the front lines of it who have given up a lot, and a lot of them have given up their lives, sadly. So it's you know, it's there's a lot going on there, and we talk about it all the time when we're making these movies, and we hope some of that talk seeps its way into, you know, the entertainment side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it with Ghost War. It definitely, if you haven't seen it yet, it is out now on Amazon Prime, and definitely worth the ride. The thrills are delivered exponentially. So a little bit of fact, a lot of thrills, perfect movie at the end, right?
Thank you so much. We hope so. We hope so.
Excellent. Andrew Bernstein, it's such a pleasure. We really appreciate you taking the time to come into the Cipher Brief studio to talk a little bit about what you do, and really want to thank you again for, I want to hear what people think about the movie too. So make sure you check it out, and then drop us a note, info@thecipherbrief.com. Let us know, and we'll share some of these insights too with our readers, particularly of our Nightcap newsletter.
Yeah, let me know.
So
Yes.
well, I liked it, so we're going to start there.
And keep doing what you're doing, Suzanne. The Cipher is great, and I hope more people read it.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you here.
All right. Bye-bye.